I'm the president of Liftport Group. Uh, Thanks for joining our episode this afternoon. It's afternoon here. It's about 5 o'clock on the West Coast. Thanks for being a part of this. This has been really a lot of fun as we have more and more interesting guests, as we do more and more analysis. Our Dare Greatly Space podcast has been kind of picking up speed. That's fun. Picking up some momentum. That's really terrific. So, for all of you that are consistently watching and listening, we really appreciate that. It'd be great if you told your friends. We only just recently got a podcast designation on our YouTube channel, so I definitely hope that you will check that out if that's the way you want to consume your space nerd media stuff. And then we've got about 7 episodes posted to Spotify. So we're working on our back catalog to get Spotify up and running. We've got more than 20 shows, so there's a lot. Actually, maybe closer to 30 shows by now. So there's a lot coming. But definitely join us on youtube.com/liftport. You know, that's our parent company, and we'll talk about that in a minute. And also on Spotify, make sure you search for Dare Greatly Space. Dare Greatly Space. There are many things branded with the phrase Dare Greatly, so we want to make sure that you get to the right spot. Yeah, and let me post that link here. Give me a second on that. I was going to tell you, because I mentioned some shows last week, since I mentioned shows that I'm paying attention to, we've actually had some people point us towards some other shows. So I'm going to give a brief recap of that. So just bear with me for a second. Let me post this to the chat. Okay, so the first one is our show. That's the Dare Greatly Space podcast. I know everybody can hear me typing. There's kind of nothing I can do about that just yet. All right, so that's our show. But I had some people, who sent me some comments, and I really appreciate our listeners kind of sharing stuff. So I don't remember which ones I said and which ones I didn't say last week, but the ones I would maybe point out would be Cool Space News with Rod Pyle. Rod has been in the space industry for a really long time. He is the editor of Ad Astra magazine for the National Space Society. He's a terrific guy and a genuine expert on the subject of space. Pathfinder is maybe a little bit more targeted to our audience. It is the business of space and policy and that intersection. Now we do that also, but really focus on commercialization and finance as well. Space Strategy is more of a defense focused channel. It's put on by the Atlantic Council for Foreign Policy. Some very knowledgeable folks over there putting that one together. Peter Garrettson, I'm definitely a fan of the work he's been doing. This Aerospace Corporation runs one called the Space Policy Show. The granddaddy of anybody doing any kind of space show anywhere in the world is a good friend of mine, Dr. David Livingston, and he's been running the space show for 20 years that I'm aware of. I have been a guest on it many times, mostly during my Earth elevators days. I haven't been a guest on it in a long time, mostly because we have been a lot quieter about what Liftport is doing. And then the final one to tell you about is Space Capital. They have a podcast. It's relatively recent, relatively new. But we're going to be talking a lot about Space Capital today. So if you like our topic today, I would recommend taking a look at taking a listen to their show. And all of these can be found on Spotify. So quick recap: cool space news with Rod Pyle, Pathfinder, Space Strategy, the Space Policy Show, the Space Show, and the Space Capital Podcast. And of course, our own Dare Greatly Space Podcast. So enjoy that. I think it's fun. I'm actually starting to learn stuff as I do this myself. So I want to make sure that you guys, all of you, know what's going on here. Today's episode, you know how we do this. We kind of have three kinds of shows. We have a news roundup, we have a space policy or document analysis, or we have a guest. I would say today is kind of a little bit of all of those things. I'm going to spend the second part of this show really focusing on a new document that came out from Space Capital. So we're going to dig into that pretty deeply. And then Leah on my team is going to go into some recap about Starship. Now, everybody who knows me knows I'm a big fan of Starship. Me and Michael Laine kind of coined the phrase Starship Singularity. I think that's important because things are going to change dramatically, unrecognizably, and in ways that we don't yet understand. So without stealing any of Leah's thunder, I'm just going to bring her on and let's get started here.
Hey.
Hey, Leah, how are you?
Hey, good.
Good.
I think I'm gonna start with talking about iSpace just for a minute because I don't want anyone to miss the lunar lander tomorrow morning. So when I woke up this morning, the first thing I saw on Twitter was this picture. It might cover us up, but everybody should see this. It's about 50 kilometers off the surface of the moon, and this is from the lunar lander. So obviously they're getting pretty close to landing. And then later in the day, they are posting more pictures. And they put this one up, which is just really incredible. And if you look really closely, you can see there's a solar eclipse over Australia, that black dot.
Oh my God.
And yeah, this picture is just like blowing me away. So they are really close to landing the first commercial lander on the moon. And that should be about 8 o'clock Pacific time, but
8 o'clock in the morning Pacific time.
Yeah, that's the first window. It's not guaranteed, but that's where they are right now. Let me see if I can put this up. So they do have a working YouTube link. So go there, save it, and it will remind you. And then the last thing I wanted to show is this is going to be a soft landing, and here's kind of the descent that they are planning to do. And I wish them luck. And if you want to be my friend, like, please go and watch this because I will try to talk to you about it. So with that, I'm going to go and start talking about Starship stuff. Let me get this graphic off of here. So everyone that probably watches our show probably already saw the Starship launch on Thursday. Basically, there was a T-40 hold, and we all were waiting, and then it actually launched at 8:33. It went up. It looked very nominal at first, and then about a minute in, we saw the on-screen graphic show that 4 of the engines were out. So I think that's when people probably thought this isn't exactly a nominal flight. And then it kept going, and then when there was supposed to be MECO, not all the engines actually shut down. I think that's when, personally, I was like, "Okay, this could be going a little awry." And then after that, there was not really a stage separation, right? So, and then everyone knows it ended in a fire explosion when they used the flight termination system. And I think we weren't sure 100% if they used the FTS, but SpaceX did update their YouTube site and it confirmed that they did use the FTS to blow it up. And they also confirmed later that 3 engines actually never ignited. I don't know if they blew up or never ignited, but 3 engines were not there. So I think afterwards, everyone's like looked at the launch pad, and it's been pretty rough. And so I have a picture of that. Chris Hadfield, the astronaut, actually. Let me see if I have it here. Actually, I don't think I have it here. I was gonna show you a picture of what the launch pad looked like. So it was. Have you seen it online?
Yeah, it's kind of a mess.
Yeah, it's
It is.
rebar
Yeah.
and no concrete and a big giant crater where there should be concrete. So I was gonna share this. So Elon's been pretty forward with answering questions about that, and so he did tweet this out that in the future, they wanna fix that to be a water-cooled steel plate, and I'm guessing that's in conjunction with a flame trench, but, I don't really know. I think that'd be a great question to ask him, because I don't even know about that. Like, that just seems a water-cooled steel plate. Okay, like, I don't know if that's a thing, but it sounds like it sounds pretty crazy, but he did say that would probably take 1 to 2 months, and there's somebody on Twitter that has a formula for the way he predicts stuff and said, "We should probably expect that in 8 to 9 months." So, translate it to actually be that. So, some other interesting things from the flight, I have another picture I'll show, is there was this picture, if you can see it, it's missing, like, 4 tiles. So, some people said, like,
Oh.
missing 4 tiles, it would completely fail, right? I don't know that it would completely fail. Personally, I have no idea. I know in the space shuttle days, the tiles were quite important, but they also lost a lot of them. There's one more picture I was gonna show you, like, related to this. So oh, wait, is that the same picture? But yeah, a little different, better angle, I think. You can make out the 4 missing tiles.
Right.
Yeah. And if you look carefully at the end, it looks like maybe it started to separate, but
Well, hold just one second. I'm gonna point out when the space shuttle re-enters atmosphere,
Mhm,
it is going vastly faster
mhm.
than so people that are trying to compare this to a shuttle reentry burn up on reentry, that's just not correct. um, the speeds are way off. Now, I'm not saying it's not going to get hot there. I don't know what the structural integrity of the space inside that is. I'm not gonna pretend I'm the kind of engineer that knows that kind of stuff. But I just want to make sure that people know that the reentry of a Starship is a whole lot slower than the was it? I think it was 27,000 miles an hour that the space shuttle would come in at after just coming through orbit. So this is a rocket that is not at orbital speeds and therefore not going to have that. So yeah, there's a lot of armchair physicists in the space community, and they think they know what they know, but they don't always. So I just want to clarify that. And then
I definitely would not claim to know that.
yeah, no, I know
I'm a
that.
super
I'm
fan, though,
not saying
and
you. I'm saying the folks that are like, it'll never work. Well, you know what? There's a lot of smart people at SpaceX, so I'm going to give them some credit. Uh,
I have one more thing I wanted to show. Well, actually, possibly 2. So, a lot of people think that there were these hydraulic power units on the sides of the booster that may have exploded that affect the gimbaling.
hmm,
Yeah,
I
and
hadn't
so
heard
people
that.
thought they
Wait,
saw
wait. Say that again.
explosions.
I hadn't heard that at all.
Yeah, so hydraulic power units on the sides, and so they power the rocket's gimbaling, and so that would be like the inner rockets, how it steers.
Yep, yep.
Oh, actually, no, I have a clip of that. Like, just like I did it twice. No, we don't want to do it twice.
Yeah,
Okay.
our mics are disabled when you do that, and I was like, "Oh, that's really cool." Like anybody could hear me.
But just so people know, that might have been destroyed, and that might have affected the second half of the flight. It very possibly could have, but I wanted to show you. So the people in
Could you
Mexico,
put that clip up one more time? I want to kind of look at it.
the
I know we
gimbaling?
can't talk
Yeah,
over
okay.
it. Cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. So if that doesn't work, nothing else is going to.
Well, steering's not going to. So
Right,
it's
which
like,
means it's not going to land where they want it. And that kind of automatically triggers in-flight destruction code. So
very possibly, yeah.
yeah.
So the next thing I'm going to show everyone, and I don't think everyone's seen this. I really want people to focus on. It's about a 40-second clip. Pay attention after the 30 seconds. So in Mexico, there's a beach called Playa Baghdad where people are getting the backside of the launch. You can see a significant explosion. Like, it's either an engine or it's actually this HPU unit. And I want people to watch this because it's just interesting. I think it's just interesting to do analysis. So I'm going to play that. I don't know if it has sound, but we'll be back in 40 seconds.
¡Uy, ya! Ahí viene, miren, miren, miren. Okay, estamos despegando. Miren todo el fuego, todo el humo. No se escucha el sonido todavía. Miren lo grande que es. ¡Wow! Miren, miren ya. Ahí viene el cohete, ya despegó, ya despegó. Se va. A 200 metros de altura. Si lo pueden ver.
Ya llegó el río.
Ahí viene el sonido, va a llegar. Va a llegar el sonido, miren, miren. ¡Wow! ¿Están viendo? Miren, miren, miren.
¡Ah, te pases! ¿Cómo se escucha?
Okay, so you probably saw that. Was that an engine? Was that an HPU? I don't know. I think it's a good question. If I could ask someone, that's a whole other angle. Like, when I saw the original broadcast and I've seen clips online, it was never that clear that anything exploded like that. So, yeah, that's where I'm at with it. That's all I got. I know Elon said he's going to do a subscriber space for people on Twitter to ask questions this Friday.
Cool.
So if anybody felt like they had a burning question to ask about what happened, good and bad, in the launch, sign up, go in there. He seems pretty open to answer questions. But yep, that's my roundup.
I love it. Thank you so much. I've got some questions here for you. So whether it was 3 or 4 to start, or whether it was 4, 5, or 6 in the middle, if you've only got 33 rocket engines and 9% or roughly 20% of your launch capacity doesn't come online, where do you think that rocket's going to land? It's going in the ocean, right? One
They
way.
probably do, but I think, like, based on the graphics, and you saw them too, they have the Starship graphics ready to go.
Yeah.
They probably expected to get stage separation. Like,
Yeah.
for all intents and purposes, I do believe they expected at least the stage separation just because they had the graphics ready to go, right? So, yeah, some people said the latches might also be powered by those HPUs, and that possibly could have be a reason the latches didn't disconnect.
Right.
But again, this is all questions I would have to ask someone else. I wouldn't know. But I do think it's fun to see everybody kind of weigh in. It's just interesting to me. So yeah, it's really fun. And I'm going to try to, I have some questions. I'm going to try to go to the Twitter spaces. And if I get any of them answered, I'll come back and give an update on my 3 questions.
Nice. I love shock diamonds. Do you want to talk about shock diamonds and maybe what you saw on that clip that you just shown from Mexico?
I don't think there was many because you saw it a little bit, but I think it was it was a little bit of a dirty launch. I mean, let's just be real.
Well, and that's the point I want to make is that you can tell how well things are going in the first 5 or 10 seconds.
Mhm.
If those shock diamonds, and for those who don't know, that's kind of the exhaust of what everybody calls the fiery hot part of the rocket. That's technical terms, but the shock diamonds, if they're clean, they're perfectly symmetrical and they're gorgeous. And if they're not clean, if they're wonky, if they like skew to one side or another, you have a major problem. So
And there was a lot of debris that kicked up because people think that the reason the HPUs might have went out, and Everyday Astronaut I saw, he has a video and he thinks the bells, the actual engine bells were knocked off 3 of the engines.
wow.
Yeah, from the concrete, like, busting back
Right,
up. So,
right.
is that true? That would be a great question because I don't think anyone can tell for sure. It was a very dusty takeoff with
Yeah, no, I'm not, again, not an engineer, not trying
Me
to
neither.
backseat drive this. And you know, I didn't like it when armchair physicists would critique our work because they weren't in the arena where we were. And I'm not trying to sit here and critique SpaceX. I'm definitely a fan of SpaceX for sure. Maybe less so of Elon Musk. Although I did want to talk about how Musk versus SpaceX, Musk has taken a fair amount of heat all of a sudden from this. And that my hunch is that's blowback from how he handled his Twitter takeover. But, you know, I may not be a fanboy of Musk. I definitely am not. But credit where it's due, the perseverance and commitment that he has had on this task, I really got to respect that. And his team, the folks at SpaceX who are actually in the trenches, whether it's a fire trench or a figurative trench, those folks really have my admiration. So I don't think I, as a general public, didn't have any expectation that this was going to work.
Yeah, I think as a space fan, most of us just came like, we're dreamers. We want to see what happens, and let's just see what happens. I didn't like if it blew up on the pad, I still was going to be a fan. Like, so
Yeah,
my level of expectation and what was going to happen was very low.
yeah.
But yeah, suddenly it was a failure. It definitely wasn't a failure.
It was
The
not
other
a
thing
failure, not by
some of
any
the things that did go wrong are going to be changed on the next iteration. So booster 7 is what just went up. Those HPUs will be electric next time to power the gimbaling. So they won't be like, you know, potentially explosive, and that'll probably make sure the steering's working. Because the tumble, that's the last video I actually have, but it's kind of long, is just to recap on the tumble, like how much tumbling was happening.
Yeah.
Knowing that the gimbaling was not working, it's in retrospect, I can see why it was tumbling. I remember we were on the phone and I'm like, what is happening? This is just free fall. Yeah.
Show it for a minute.
Yeah, okay. So this is the actual SpaceX official live feed from that day.
As of right now, we are awaiting stage separation, where Starship should separate from the Super Heavy booster.
Yeah, Kate, right now it looks like we saw the start of the flip, but obviously we're seeing from the ground cameras the entire Starship stack continuing to rotate. We should have had separation by now. Obviously, this does not appear to be a nominal situation.
Yeah, it does appear to be spinning, but I do want to remind everyone that everything after clearing the tower was icing on the cake. And there, as you saw, as we promised, an exciting end.
So that was the recap of the explosion. I will say if the FTS didn't work and it hit water like that, I don't know, but I would believe that the FAA would have probably been pretty upset. So luckily that was activated and worked, because I
Yeah.
really think that could have been a problem.
Well, that's a test of its own right?
For
That
sure.
that's the SpaceX team is a steward of the local environment, and they don't want that much fuel coming down, any more than anybody else does, right? I think people should remember that SpaceX employees live in that town. They
Oh
are
yeah.
a member of that community, and the idea of a big giant rocket dropping a bunch of rocket fuel in their neighborhood is probably not a good thing for the SpaceX employees, right?
I mean, it's surrounded by a wildlife
Yeah. Yeah.
refuge as well, and they have sea turtles down there. There's a lot of special nature stuff around that
Yeah.
area.
And
It's very beautiful.
they got to do that. Hey, I want to do a quick shout out to Doug, Jonathan, and Tim. Nice to see y'all. Tim, to answer, obviously the videos that Leah is showing are recorded, but this is in fact live. Our show we're doing right now is live. We do this twice a week, Mondays and Wednesdays at this time. So glad to see you. Thanks for coming by, Tim. Appreciate it. Doug Plata's got a comment that says the water-cooled plate is probably a flame diverter and not a trench. Cool, didn't know that. Doug, did you head down that direction? I know you've been following this pretty closely. Type it in the chat if you whether you went or didn't go. We know that our friend Rick Tomlinson did go. He's got some great videos. So if you look up Rick Tomlinson, Rocket Rick on Instagram, he's got a kind of a choked up, teary-eyed moment as he's talking about how we're watching history and how this is the Wright brothers moment. So yeah, pretty neat stuff. Jonathan, thanks for stopping by. Appreciate it. Like having you here. Okay, Leah, anything else you want to talk about for Starship?
No, it got to an apogee of 39 kilometers. Not quite orbital,
Yeah,
suborbital.
Not
So they can
not that close actually.
Yeah, it's not
not
that close.
really, but
It's
still
not.
good. Still good.
It's good.
Everybody knows, SpaceX has a history of pretty dramatic failures on their first flights. It got pretty far along, all things considered. So hats off to them for doing that. Whether it's 2 months or 22 months, we know that the next Starship is going to, have some built-in improvements. That ship was stacked one on top of each other for a long time. That's a lot of weight, right? So
Yeah.
just the structural stress of it's pretty enormous.
They did do some testing out there today, and the ship quick disconnect arm is still working, and the chopsticks are still working. So they really just have to work on the launch mount, the underneath, getting a better system. Whether it's the water cooled steel, I don't know. I'd love for him to answer those questions about it, because.
Can you post the links to the Q&A or how to get them into the chat?
You have to go to his Twitter and subscribe to him. There's not really a link.
Okay.
You have to pay, and then he hasn't announced the time, but he did about an hour last time, and he let probably 25 people come on stage and talk to him and ask questions. So
awesome.
Yeah. He's really transparent, and that's a really good thing, because if it was Blue Origin, we still would know none of this. To them, but
hate to say that's true, but everybody knows it's true.
It's true. It's totally true.
Okay.
It takes months to get anything out of them, but
yeah.
Okay. That's what we got, though.
All right. Well, thanks a lot. And iSpace, first thing tomorrow. Before we go, let's talk about iSpace for a second longer. Talk about the company. It's what it's doing and why it matters? Can you go into that a little bit?
I do know a little bit. I don't probably know as much as I should. It's a 10-day mission, so on the surface of the moon, the whole mission's much longer. So once it actually lands, it'll be 10 days. They have a thing from NASA where they're supposed to collect regolith, and they're going to do some kind of experiment. That's the first ISRU in situ resource utilization. So they have that, and then they have a mini rover they're going to put out, and they're testing a solid state battery. There's like 3 or 4 more experiments. I honestly can't remember, but
Yeah, that's cool.
yeah, it's only for 10 days. So, you know, they did say they're having power issues a little bit because of the eclipse, like, because they've lost a little bit of power. So, but yeah, this is the first commercial launch or lander.
Well,
So this will be news. This is history for
it's
sure.
in history, right?
Mhm.
And so, just for perspective, I think it was 2019 and 2020. Maybe they were both in 2019. But both Israel and India sent commercial missions to the moon,
But failed.
and both of them turned into craters, right? One was a $70 million crater, the other one's a $130 million crater. But let's put that in perspective for a second. That they could get to the moon at all, that India could get to the moon, that Israel could get to the moon as a commercial project. Well, let's see. Israel was a commercial project with an awful lot of help from the state. And India was maybe 70-40, geez, bad math, 70-30, mostly governmental. But those were attempts to go to the moon, and they got within 100 kilometers.
See, they're already at 50 kilometers. Those
Yeah.
photos that I was showing at the beginning
Yeah.
of the episode,
Right.
and they're aiming for a very soft landing. So they're going to really ease into this landing. Where the other 2 that you mentioned, they lost connection, and
Right.
for all intents and purposes, that was a very hard landing because they
For all intents and purposes, it
crashed in a
was
bit. So.
scattered across the.
Yeah. I got up and watched both of those too.
Yeah,
I was very
yeah.
sad for them.
Yeah.
I honestly think iSpace it's going to go really great.
Well, that's what I was going to say is that, look, iSpace is taking a completely different path. I mean, philosophically a different path, but an actually different path in their trajectory planning, in their route planning.
Yeah.
And so this has been in space for months now.
Yeah, they're doing I won't get it right, the near rectilinear halo orbit.
Exactly, right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So they're really, really low now, and then that they've done all this remotely. It's really quite remarkable. iSpace is a Japanese company, is that right?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
But they have, like, I think they said they have over 20 countries represented in the creation of the lander, the rover, the experiments. But yeah, so the NASA and the regolith and bringing it back and, starting it in situ resource utilization, that's a mouthful.
Yeah.
That's what we want. We want to look forward to the future and imagine using the regolith. So
Right.
people that are in a space should definitely get up, check it out, and let's all hope it's third time's a charm, because there's been some failures.
Well, the last successful mission that landed on the moon, that was China 5 years ago. So, well, no, that's not true. China's landed twice in the last 5 years.
Yeah, because they had the plants that froze. Yeah. I don't know
Yeah.
which variation of Chang'e it is, but
The plants that froze, they had them fully developed before they even launched, and they
were icicles, thaws, and then they froze again.
It's a propaganda piece. It was an effective propaganda piece.
It worked on me because I didn't know that. So
okay. With that, you're going to do a show tomorrow morning. Is that what you said?
No.
Somebody who's doing a show tomorrow morning, a live stream?
iSpace's live lunar landing. This is the link for it.
Okay. That's the link,
Yes.
this YouTube link. All right.
Yeah.
Somehow I misinterpreted when you said that it was going to be.
No, but I inadvertently scheduled a meeting like while this is going on. So the people on my meeting have just signed up for a live show with me. So that's great. They don't know that, but I'm going to tell them that when we go to the meeting tomorrow at 8. So
All right, good. All right, well, we're going to be on there. Okay, with that, thanks a lot, Leah. This was awesome. Appreciate your expertise here. I'm going to push you off to the side and get on to the next part of the program.
all right, thanks. Bye.
Thanks. All right, that was Leah. She's been on our team for about a year now. She's terrific. I often refer to her as my kind of the right arm on the team. And a not so funny joke in our team is that I get the clients and she keeps them and keeps them happy. So she's a key part of the operations team. So thanks a lot, Leah. Appreciate it. Okay. Switching gears a little bit, let me pull up a file. Okay. I'm going to go a little speedier than I have at other times. This is the Space Investment Quarterly, Q1, 2023. If you'll remember, early January, we did a Space Investment Quarterly review. I'm a big fan of Space Capital. These folks are really good at what they do. Private market equity investment activity and startup trends in the space economy from the investors at the forefront. That is 100% true, right? They are the investors at the forefront. They have been leading the space investment community since 2005, 2006, perhaps. Back then, they were known as Space Angels, which if you look at their logo, let's see if we can see their logo. This tiny thing, let's see if I can see their logo bigger. Hold on a second. You can see their little like watermark here, but I want to see if I can get it bigger. That doesn't really do it justice, but the wings there are to represent their history as a space angel. I know that's a little bit of a stretch, but just take my word for it. So these folks, Space Capital, Space Angels, call them what you want. They have been in this field, in this sector, really, truly since the beginning. And hats off to them. A couple of years ago, they started creating some tracking metrics. And I want to encourage you to go to their site and mess around with their tracking metrics. Because they're pretty interesting. They've got a very detailed site where you can scan for things that you're directly interested in. I'm going to get to their site in a moment. Just stick with me here. All right. So now we're on their site. You can grab their data, but this is the part I wanted to kind of walk through a little bit. We haven't done this before. They've got a mobile version. I actually think the mobile version is terrible. Do it on your desktop. It's a much better experience. That is here. So this represents basically almost 10 years worth of data, nine and a quarter years worth of data. And you can do all sorts of stuff with this, right? So if you want to just see the moon, you can just see the moon. I know these are a little hard to see. Let me see if I can blow it up a little bit. That's probably the best I can do given the limitations of the screen and the system. So I want to encourage you to just go to their site and play around with it how you like. I would say based on this that 2021 was the year of the moon, right? If you're trying to track like what's happening, if you look at the number of rounds and the kinds of rounds, 2021, 2022 is definitely the year of the moon. I suspect 2023 is also, but this isn't off to a good start, right? So I was a little surprised by this, given how much activity we're seeing, how much interest there. So there's kind of two things to take away from this. If you're going to the moon, are you too late? Have the VCs funded the lunar deals they're going to do? I'm not sure about that. I think that's a really interesting and maybe important question. So that one's interesting. I think there's going to be some stuff there. You can look at it by the numbers of rounds. We always pay attention to the dark green seed and Series A. That's always leading. I'm perplexed by how this is a late stage. I don't know what that means. I'm a little confused by that. I'm going to try and figure that out from the data, from the reports. And this is typical, right? Lots of investments at the early stage, doesn't add up to a lot of money. I mean, honestly, $200 million times two, $400 million, given what this stuff is, that seems kind of in the right ballpark. I'm surprised to see Brazil even on this list. I'm guessing that Israel is the thing that we just talked about a moment ago. But it's really, the data set is really small, right? If we take lunar off and look at the whole thing, it's 28 out of nearly 1,800, right? It's 800 million out of 272 billion, right? So that's a pretty small. What is that? It's pretty close to, I don't know, pretty close to 1/300th, pretty close. So not a lot, not really a lot. So does that tell you that we're too early or too late? I think maybe I think we're going to see a lot more lunar deals. That's just my interpretation of this data. What else are we looking at? Take a look at infrastructure. All right, lots of stuff was funded in 2021. We know that the Space Industrial Base had some pretty important meetings during 2020. How is this playing out in our world? I find this a little disturbing because this is implying that it's just one game in town. I feel like maybe their data is wrong. Oh no, I'm misreading this. Sorry, I'm putting this chart with, I'm sorry, this key in with this data. I'm just reading it wrong. My error. I asked for the tech layer of infrastructure. It gave me the tech layer of infrastructure, 55 billion. Sorry, I misread that. I don't want to go all the way back to 2014. I don't think that tells us very much, other than when you're trying to find, longevity graphs like this. I want to bring it up to, I would say this is the modern era of space investing. But look at this, right? This is everything, 272 billion. Let's bring it to the modern era of space investing. half of it has happened in the last 3 years. Out of 11 years or 10 years worth of data, half of it's happened basically now. If you take 2023 out of the equation entirely, it's even bigger. It's a bigger percentage, right? So that kind of stuff kind of tells you, hey, there's a lot happening here. The number of companies, these are funded companies, right? There's a whole level of companies that are not tracked by space capital because they have not hit that metric of funding that space capital watches for. So that's important too. So we know that there's 1,700 total companies in the ecosystem. I'm going to simplify that and say 1,750. Out of 1,750, how many are still alive, right? If you go all the way back to the earliest days, the pioneering days of space investing, are there 745 companies from then that you can name? Because I can't. I can name some, but I couldn't name 745. So my hunch is a lot of these got burned. A lot of them got merged into larger companies. We may never know the results of this. I don't know if there is tracking on what happened after round A, round B, the angel round. As far as I know, there's no tracking on this. So this always is an open question to me. How much of this 75 billion still exists and still has value? Because all they're tracking is money going in, not results. I think that's a really, really important piece that would be very helpful to this industry. What happens if? Notice that Luxembourg has a little sliver here, but if you expand it out, Luxembourg falls into the noise level, right? So Luxembourg was a pretty significant player for a while. In the years I was just describing, they were putting a lot of money into resource development, in space, capturing. They put some money into asteroid mining. They put money into lunar regolith development. They're barely even visible on this list anymore. So yeah, I would like to see kind of the rest of the story. So I'm really focusing here, right? I'm focusing on where we are now, who's doing what. Frankly, I'm stunned that Estonia is on this list. I mean, I really am. I definitely need to look into that to understand that better. I don't think anybody's going to be surprised that USA and China are in this list. US with 53% of the global capital. 53% of 125 billion is 66 billion. So I don't think that's really a surprise. And then if we look at its launch, right? A big chunk of that is launch. A tiny chunk of it is lunar, right? Satellites always, that's the bread and butter of the whole industry. So no surprise there. That is where Estonia is. That just popped back onto the screen. Stations in the US, it's stations, right? That's where we're putting a lot of the capital. 21 companies, $1 billion. That doesn't surprise me very much. I was talking to an investor about a week and a half ago, and the conversation went something like this. Do you still invest in launch? Yes, they do. Yes, they do. Yes, they do. In America, many companies, many VCs, angel networks are not investing in launch anymore. So I was trying to understand what the disparity is. And I think, I don't have data, I don't have evidence, this is my guess, based off of graphics like this, that we in the United States have gotten really good at launch, and we've gotten really good at satellites. And so what's the next challenge to really address? And if anybody's watched any of my older videos, I've got this whole line of thinking. I call it the grand architecture, and it's how each stage unfolds. So take a look at that on our YouTube channel. Just type grand architecture, youtube.com/liftport, and just type grand architecture, where I go into some detail about how this is happening. And this proves it out, right? Because the way that I describe it is launch, and then satellites, move on to space tugs and stations, move on to lunar elevators, because I'm going to put that in there. If I'm going to build a grand architecture, I'm definitely going to showcase that. And then lunar development, ISRU, mining. So there's kind of 6 stages. And I think this is, the money is following that path pretty closely. I don't think anybody's going to be surprised. There's a lot of folks involved with building satellites. I don't think there, in terms of countries, in terms of capital investment, in terms of the number of companies, this one is the most globally diversified. Nations have real reasons to want to be, capable, upskilling their national capabilities in this key technology. So I don't think that's going to surprise anybody. We've talked a little bit about lunar. There's not many folks, commercially playing. Now I want to point out, Japan, this is probably iSpace that we were talking about just, a moment ago landing. I mean, that's my hunch. Again, don't have data other than the charts I'm seeing the same way you are. You could argue, where's China in this list? And the rebuttal to that is they're not on the list because they don't play by the same space capital, private capital rules. So that's something I think does lead to a little bit of disparity in the data. I'm not gonna throw shade at space capital because I think they've got the best data that they can operate with. It just simply may not be available. Lots of stuff happening in launch. Lots of companies involved. This goes back to my argument that national sovereignty plays a part in launch. However, Switzerland completely baffles me. No idea why that's there. There is a very small rocket company out of Amsterdam. They're hosted by some International Space University folks. Hats off to them for doing what they're doing. And then South Korea just created its own space agency recently. So I would have expected a little bit more out of Canada, although the company that SpaceRide, SPACRYDE, I think this is how they spell it. SpaceRide went out of business. That's the only Canadian launch company I'm personally aware of. So maybe that's what that is. I don't understand their definition for industrials, so I don't have any insight into this. So I'll show the graphic, but it doesn't mean anything to me. So I can't help you with that. Sorry. Gonna take that off. So this is a super powerful tool. They throw Power BI, I think, is a Microsoft database tool, and they have all the data that they have ever collected into this thing. So it's really interesting to get into the nuance of how this stuff is happening. I would be a little daunted by this curve if I didn't know that we're only in first quarter of 2023. And a lot of people are worried about the investment climate in 2023. So this doesn't really surprise me, although certainly we don't want to watch that curve continue later in the year and then into next year. With that, I'm going to probably close out of this show and tell. Let me close this. Let me see if there's any questions. Okay. Yeah, I'm going to close out of the show and tell here. And give me a second. Let me post this link. Here's a link to Space Capital Quarterly. Cool stuff, definitely worth taking a look at there. I spent a lot of time going through this their document, but I really recommend that you get the report itself. It's got some really interesting definitions, like what is an application, what's distribution, and what's infrastructure, and then example companies. They go into a lot of detail in the area that I'm most interested in, which is the emerging piece, right? Emerging industries is a subset of infrastructure, and it really focuses on the moon. And that's where we're spending a lot of attention. I definitely recommend that you take a look at that. It shows some of the biggest companies getting funded, why they're funded. These are all small companies, even though they're the biggest of this sector. Of the whole industry, infrastructure is only one segment, and emerging industries is a subset of a subset of a subset. But that's where the moon lives, and so that's what I pay attention to. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and close out both this part of the investor side of the show. As always, I want to thank my team. They're terrific. We saw Leah, so thanks a lot, Leah. Rachel, our reporter. Rachel's going to go to an analogs conference out in Arizona next week, so we're going to get some really cool firsthand information about what's going on out there. Jin and Sinki are terrific, kind of in the background. Really appreciate their help. And then Yusuf. Between them, we've got a great team, and I'm really grateful because this stuff couldn't happen without them. But it also can't happen without you, all of you folks. So we really appreciate the solidarity, showing up for our shows regularly like you do. Appreciate that. I'd love to keep going. I'm going to probably call each of you, the ones that are on my screen. Thanks a lot. I'm probably going to call you all this week. And ask you some questions, just get some feedback. And with that, we're gonna peace out. I will see you on Wednesday. We've got a great guest on Wednesday. We've actually got a series of great guests lining up. Folks from Rogue Space, folks from they don't represent the Pentagon, but they know a lot about the Pentagon. That's what I'm going to say. I'm not gonna say it like they represent. We've got some folks talking about Singularity, Starship Singularity. What else do we have coming up that's pretty neat? Oh, right. We've got some space policy stuff coming up. I announced last week that the new client, the Space Frontier Foundation, that's starting to build. So that's really cool. We're going to do 15 interviews with some of the pioneers of the Space Frontier Foundation. If you're not sure who they are or what that's about, definitely take a look at them. That organization's been in business for 35 years. This is a history project for them. So that's going to be super fun. We'll do the show like we usually do, but we're also recording it for some media products for the Space Frontier Foundation. So that'll be fun. And then yes, thank you, Leah. She pointed out that Jeremy Grimmett from Rogue Space is going to be here on Wednesday. I don't know that much about Rogue Space, so I'm really interested to learn from him. It's one of the many rocket companies out there. They're trying to do some cool stuff. We're going to talk about robotics, so that's pretty neat. Okay, with that, I'm going to close off. Thanks a lot, everybody. Appreciate it. Bye-bye.